Introduction. The day the pagers exploded, September 17, 2024. Imagine you are in Beirut, the vibrant capital of Lebanon, on a September morning in 2024. The sun rises over concrete buildings, interspersed with bustling markets where laughter mingles with the aroma of roasted coffee and fresh bread. For millions of Lebanese people, this is just an ordinary autumn day. Children rushing to school, drivers jostling in rush hour traffic, and office workers hurrying with hot cups of tea. But for members of Hezbollah, the powerful Shiite Islamic organization backed by Iran controlling a large part of the country's politics and military, that day carries a layer of harsh security. They don't use shiny smartphones, those digital traitors that can be tracked by enemies. Instead, they rely on classic pagers from the 1990s, compact, long-lasting batteries, one-way message reception only, and seemingly unhackable. A low-tech choice they believe is absolutely safe, especially after leader Hassan Nasrallah's smartphone ban in February this year. Around 3:30 p.m., that false peace shatters like a timed bomb. A Hezbollah fighter patrolling in Dahieh, the fortified stronghold in southern Beirut, where the organization has thousands of members, feels the pager clipped to his belt vibrate. The tiny screen flashes a strange message, system error, or perhaps important message, press to read. Out of habit, he brings the device close to his face, his finger lightly pressing the button. And then, a sharp explosion rings out like a mini firecracker detonating in the palm of his hand. Metal shards fly everywhere, PT and chemical, a colorless, odorless plastic explosive, sprays out like acid-burning skin, eyes, and throat. Blood and gore everywhere screams echoing through the crowded street. This is not a personal accident. This is the first signal of a collective nightmare. In just a few minutes, the shockwave spreads like an electronic storm. Thousands of pagers, estimated at around 3,000 to 5,000 devices distributed widely to Hezbollah fighters and staff, explode simultaneously across Lebanon and even spill over into Syria. From the bustling heart of Beirut to the arid Bekaa Valley, from southern border neighborhoods to the quiet streets of Damascus. The sound is not the roar of massive bombs shaking the earth, but a series of small, sharp pops, cold and precise enough to turn everyday objects into lethal weapons. A man in Tyre loses his entire right hand while driving. A woman in Bekaa goes blind in one eye from shrapnel hitting her face. Even 2 children and 4 medical staff are among the victims, as those harmless pagers were used by families of Hezbollah members too. According to Lebanon's Ministry of Health, in the first day alone, at least 12 people were killed and over 2,800 seriously injured, a number that skyrocketed to over 4,000 when including the radio explosion wave the next day. Hospitals in Beirut and Tyre quickly descend into chaos, hallways flooded with moans, emergency rooms overwhelmed with patients suffering chemical burns, temporary blindness, and horrific facial injuries. Ambulances wail non-stop. Doctors work tirelessly, while the Lebanese government declares a national emergency. Hundreds toss pagers into the streets like time bombs, creating hazardous piles that the army has to come clean up. This is no random technical glitch. The synchronized volume, clear targeting, and terrifying precision screams. This is a pinnacle intelligence attack. And the culprit, none other than Mossad, Israel's notorious intelligence agency, famous for bold operations from assassinating Iranian scientists to stealing nuclear documents. With over 10 years tracking Mossad's activities, I can say this was no impulsive strike. This is the peak of a meticulously prepared soft penetration campaign through the global supply chain. Mossad exploited Hezbollah's security obsession, turning the cheap gold Apollo pagers, purchased through shell companies like BAC Consulting, into weapons. Inside the lithium battery of each device, about 3 grams of PETN was cleverly embedded enough to cause severe injury to the holder without major impact on bystanders. The activation signal, a simple radio message sent from a secret transmitter, turning an innocent button press into a deadly detonator. The goal was not just killing, though the tragedy claimed at least 37 lives, including innocent civilians. It was to sever Hezbollah's command and control C2 system, immediately paralyzing the communication network, sowing psychological fear and forcing the organization into panic. A strike without needing drones or missiles, just the patience of spies lurking in the shadows of global business. And a year later, in September 2025, the victims are still struggling on a long road to recovery, endless surgeries, faces riddled with scars, permanent loss of vision, and the haunting dread of safe, everyday objects. According to Reuters and AP, thousands, from fighters to children, still require long-term treatment, turning Beirut into a city scarred not just physically, but spiritually. This video will take you deep into the story, from Hezbollah's long-standing enmity to the deadly tech vulnerability they created themselves through Mossad's decade-long preparation and the shocking consequences for the Middle East. Is this a masterpiece of intelligence or a brutal act crossing ethical boundaries? Keep watching to find out, and don't forget to like and subscribe to not miss the next Mossad secrets. Let's begin. Bantid di Son. To background and reasons for Israel's attack on Hezbollah. To truly grasp the devastating power of the pager explosion campaign on September 17, 2024, we must step back and look at the bigger picture. A decades-long confrontation between Israel and Hezbollah, where each side views the other as an existential threat. With over 10 years tracking Mossad's intelligence campaigns, I can assert that explosion was no spur-of-the-moment strike, but the culmination of a long-term strategy nurtured by deep-seated historical enmity and cold strategic calculations. Let's explore why Israel decided to act so boldly, turning harmless pagers into weapons of destruction. Let's start at the roots. Hezbollah, or Party of God, was founded in 1982 amid the rubble of Israel's invasion of Lebanon. Initially, it was just a small Shiite guerrilla group backed by Iran to resist Tel Aviv's occupation of southern Lebanon. But under the skilled hands of leaders like Hassan Nasrallah, who later became the organization's immortal icon, Hezbollah quickly morphed into a hybrid monster, both a resistance force and a state within a state deeply embedded in Lebanese society. They are not just gun-toting fighters. They are parliamentarians in Lebanon's National Assembly, running a vast network of schools, hospitals, and charities stretching from Beirut to Bekaa. Their Al-Manar TV channel broadcasts 24/7, propagandizing against Israel and glorifying Islamic resistance. This is a massive social system that buys Hezbollah the loyalty of millions of impoverished Shiites, turning them into human shields against any eradication efforts. Militarily, Hezbollah is Israel's true nightmare. With generous funding from Iran, estimated at up to $700 million per year, according to U.S. reports, and logistical support from Syria, the organization has built a massive arsenal and hundreds of thousands of ballistic missiles, anti-tank rockets, and even precision-guided missiles. By 2024, Their armed forces numbered around 100,000 fighters, larger than Lebanon's regular army. They dug tunnels along Israel's northern border, turning the Galilee hills into constant targets. Hezbollah's goal is unhidden: destroy the Jewish state, wipe Israel off the map, as Nasrallah publicly declared. For Israel, this is no ordinary terrorist group. It's a strategic threat, a sharp needle aimed at the jugular used by Iran as an extended arm to encircle Tel Aviv from the north. Everything erupted after Hamas's brutal attack on Israel on October 7, 2023, a day when over 1,200 Israelis were killed and hundreds abducted. Hezbollah didn't sit idle. The very next day, they opened a second front from Lebanon, turning the northern border into a hellfire. Over the next nearly year, Hezbollah launched around 8,000 to 10,000 rocket attacks, according to estimates from the Israel Defense Forces (IDF), with over 1,900 directly targeting northern civilian areas and infrastructure. Israel's Iron Dome defense system intercepted most, but the damage was horrific. Over 60,000 Israeli residents in the Galilee, peaceful towns like Kiryat Shmona and Metula, had to evacuate urgently, abandoning homes, farms, and lives. That fertile land turned into a dead zone where children couldn't go to school and the local economy ground to a halt. For Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the war cabinet, this was a national humiliation. Israel was fighting Hamas in Gaza, but had to spread forces thin against the dagger thrust from Lebanon. Pressure from the Israeli public mounted. Protests demanding northern security now, forcing the government to act decisively. And this is the strategic reason behind the pager campaign. Israel could not and would not negotiate with terrorists. A full-scale invasion of Lebanon would bring disaster, direct intervention from Iran, massive civilian casualties, and potentially a regional war. Instead, Mossad, with its philosophy of by any means, by any method, chose a decapitation strategy, neutralizing Hezbollah's key leadership unexpectedly and precisely through intelligence rather than gunfire. For decades, Mossad had shadowed Nasrallah and his generals, like ghosts planning assassinations, but always waiting for the perfect opportunity. The pager strike didn't just sever the nerve of Command C2, the communication network Hezbollah depended on, but also sowed psychological fear. We are everywhere, right in your pocket. A year later, in October 2025, the aftermath lingers. Hezbollah, severely weakened after Nasrallah's death and thousands of fighters killed, faces a disarmament plan from the Lebanese government backed by the U.S. But the organization refuses, causing internal divisions and chaos, according to Al Jazeera and the Institute for the Study of War. Israel has destroyed numerous tunnels and weapon depots in southern Lebanon, but Hezbollah remains a legitimate party in the eyes of some, and the threat hasn't vanished entirely. The pager campaign changed the game, but is it enough to end the cycle of enmity? Next, we'll dig deep into the deadly tech vulnerability Hezbollah created themselves and how Mossad exploited it. Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow the Mossad secrets journey. Man Nanai Third. Hezbollah's communication technology and the deadly vulnerability. Imagine you are a Hezbollah fighter hiding in the narrow alleys of Dahieh, Beirut, with your once companion smartphone now buried deep underground. No more ping-ping notifications from WhatsApp, no more Google Maps guiding the way. Just a small square object from the 1990s, the pager. That's classic communication technology. A device that receives one-way messages via radio waves, no sending back, no calls, no photos or videos. It just vibrates, flashing a few lines on the tiny LCD screen, a number to call back a short phrase or an emergency order. Its lithium battery can last weeks without charging, operating stably, even in thick concrete buildings or deep underground bunkers. That's why pagers still survive in US or Japanese hospitals today. Simple, reliable, and nearly impervious to cyber attacks. But why would an elite military organization like Hezbollah, with a modern arsenal and widespread intelligence network, revert to this dinosaur of outdated tech? The answer lies in a deadly security obsession after Hamas's October 7, 2023 attack. Supreme Leader Hassan Nasrallah, famous for his fiery anti-Israel speeches, recognized a harsh truth. Smartphones aren't tools, they're traitors in your pocket. In February 2024, he publicly issued a strict ban: turn off all phones, bury them, lock them away. This order applied not just to fighters, but to their families too. A comprehensive measure to erase digital footprints. Why smartphones are a goldmine for Mossad and Israeli intelligence agencies. Let's break it down. Every iPhone or Samsung creates a massive digital footprint. Metadata, superdata, records everything. GPS location accurate to the meter connection, times, contacts, and even daily movement patterns. Mossad, with NSO Group's Pegasus tool, had hacked hundreds of Hezbollah leaders' phones before turning them into tracking links. A Telegram message easily intercepted, a secret Zoom call. Metadata maps the entire social graph of the network. iCloud or Google Drive backups. That's the gateway for Israel to analyze big data, predicting rocket attacks from Lebanon. Nasrallah knew, in the digital world, secrecy is an illusion. So from spring 2024, Hezbollah switched to pagers and simple radios. Low-tech devices they believed were perfect shields. No internet, no GPS, no mic or camera, just one-way radio waves hard to hack with batteries lasting a month. They're cheap, easy to buy in bulk from Asian suppliers, and spread quickly through the ranks from top commanders to frontline fighters. That's a dark network, nearly invisible to Israel's electronic radar. But here's the tragedy. That switch wasn't a security victory. It was a self-dug trap, a deadly vulnerability Mossad had waited decades for. Call it the illusion of simple, quest safe, a classic blunder in the intelligence world. Hezbollah focused on complex digital threats, forgetting the golden rule. Every physical device depends on a physical supply chain. By eliminating hacking risks, they pushed themselves into the arms of supply chain warfare, a field where Mossad is a master. The organization had to buy identical pagers in bulk from a few suppliers like Gold Apollo, ensuring uniformity and simple logistics. That was the fatal flaw. Mossad could intervene right at the factory, replacing standard batteries with versions containing 3 grams of PETN undetected. That uniformity turned a small flaw into a mass catastrophe. The simpler the device, the easier to disassemble and tamper with. Ideal for Israeli agents posing as businessmen. And the activation signal: even one-way radio waves need a trigger. A fake message demanding a button press, turning an unconscious action into a fateful moment. A year later, in October 2025, Hezbollah is still grappling with this lesson. According to reports from the National and the Institute for the Study of War, the organization has optimized communications by diversifying suppliers and adding manual checks, but fear lingers. Every new device is suspect. They've even experimented with non-digital methods like couriers, but the scale makes it impossible. Mossad proved, in modern warfare, weakness isn't in high tech. It's in blind faith, in simplicity. So Hezbollah turned their security network into a minefield, and Mossad just pressed the button. Next, we'll explore how Mossad prepared over a decade to turn that illusion into reality. What do you think about the trade-off between old tech and safety? Comment below and subscribe to not miss the next part of the Mossad journey. 4. Mossad's long-term preparation, the global infiltration network. Have you ever wondered how can an intelligence agency turn a cheap pager into a mass destruction weapon undetected for over a decade? With over 10 years tracking Mossad's campaigns, I can say the pager explosion on September 17, 2024 wasn't a flash idea from a Tel Aviv meeting room. It's the pinnacle of an intelligence masterpiece, patient, sophisticated, and ruthless enough to send shivers worldwide. Mossad, with the motto, "By way of deception, thou shalt do war," spent over a decade building a fake world where the enemy willingly buys their own bomb. Let's dive deep into that meticulous preparation from initial tests to the global intermediary network. It all started not with pagers, but with radios, tactical communication devices Hezbollah had used for years. Around 2015, according to revelations from former Mossad officers, the agency tested a weaponized gadget model. Israeli engineers working in secret labs under tech company covers embedded a small amount of explosive into handheld radio batteries. Not a big bomb, just enough for severe injury on activation. The result, Mossad infiltrated the global supply chain using intermediaries in Asia and Europe to sell over 16,000 tampered radios to Hezbollah. Those devices lay dormant in the organization's arsenals, awaiting the moment. Hezbollah bought them unsuspectingly. Cheap, good quality, perfect for Lebanon's hilly terrain. Mossad waited, monitored, refined testing, durability, activation, precision, and how they blended into enemy daily life. That was the seeding phase, a decade of patience where Israel turned Hezbollah's trust into a fatal weakness. But the battlefield shifted. After October 7, 2023, when Nasrallah banned smartphones and ramped up pagers, Mossad pivoted quickly. The radio foundation became a springboard for a bigger strike, not just individual devices, but Hezbollah's entire daily communication channel. The goal now was a simultaneous attack, turning thousands of pagers into synchronized time bombs. This is when Mossad deployed its pinnacle tactic, corporate camouflage, hiding intelligence ops under legitimate business attire. They didn't hack, they sold. Using a network of shell companies, ghostly entities existing only on paper with fake addresses and offshore bank accounts, Mossad created a complete business ecosystem. Two standout names: BAC Consulting, a supply chain consulting firm based in Hungary, and Gold Apollo, the famous Taiwanese pager brand for cheap products. Hezbollah bought about 5,000 pagers from Gold Apollo via BAC, but in reality all controlled remotely by Mossad. The infiltration process was like a meticulously directed stage play. Mossad hired agents under businessman covers, a Lebanese-Israeli woman posing as a friendly sales rep, approaching Hezbollah suppliers at tech fairs in Turkey and the UAE. They printed glossy brochures advertising waterproof, dust-proof pagers with 3-month battery life, features perfect for field fighters. Initial batches were sold at shock discounts, or even as gifts to build trust. Hezbollah, desperate for secure gear, swallowed the bait whole. No one checked thoroughly. Airport X-rays didn't detect PETN, a non-metallic plastic explosive invisible under X-rays. Mossad engineers tested hundreds of times on human dummies, calibrating the 3-gram charge, enough to shred a hand spray chemicals, causing blindness and chemical burns but limiting collateral damage to avoid killing innocents and triggering immediate international backlash. The truth was partially revealed through CBS's 60 Minutes, aired in June 2025, a media bombshell that stunned the world. Two former Mossad officers, anonymous as Michael and Gabriel, with masked faces and distorted voices, detailed it for the first time. "We didn't sell bombs, we sold hope," Michael said. "Shell companies upon shell companies. We create a fake world. We are the manufacturer, the screenwriter, the director, and the producer." Gabriel added, "Gold Apollo had no idea. They were just the outermost shell." The interview confirmed. The entire operation spanned 9–10 years, from radios to pagers costing millions, but with superior efficiency. Mossad even anticipated Nasrallah's smartphone ban, pivoting in months. A year later, in October 2025, that preparation's legacy still haunts. According to Al Jazeera, Lebanon is grappling with a horrific year, from pagers to Israeli airstrikes, with victims still needing long-term medical support. Hezbollah has tightened supply chain checks, but Mossad set a new standard for supply chain warfare, a lesson making CIA and MI6 study it. That patience didn't just destroy Hezbollah's network, it reminds. In the intelligence world, the winner is the one who waits longest. Next, we'll witness Activation Day, when the fake world shatters. Can you imagine how far Mossad risked? Comment your thoughts and subscribe for the thrilling Part 5. V. Executing the campaign Activation Day in double chaos. Put yourself in the shoes of a Mossad agent lurking in the shadows, finger hovering over the secret signal transmitter's keyboard. After over a decade of preparation, the moment arrives. On September 17, 2024, amid the sweltering afternoon in Beirut, a terse command is sent from an invisible location, perhaps a modified truck on Tel Aviv's outskirts, or a satellite orbiting the Middle East. It's not the roar of bombs or missiles tearing the sky. It's a sophisticated radio signal spreading through the air like a poisonous wind. The pager explosion campaign, codenamed Model per intelligence sources, is activated. With over 10 years tracking Mossad, I can envision it clearly. Not a single strike, but two waves 24 hours apart, calculated to turn chaos into permanent paralysis. This is the story of the day the fake world crumbles, and Hezbollah realizes the enemy is right in their pocket. Melee Reri. Wave 1. Pager explosion. Small storm, massive damage. September 17, 2024, 3:30 p.m. The timing is perfect peak operational hour when Hezbollah fighters are patrolling, meeting, or even having family meals. The activation signal isn't random. It's disguised as a familiar fake message sent simultaneously to about 5,000 distributed pagers. The LCD screen flashes system error or important message. Press 2 buttons to read. That's the deadly trick one-way pagers force users to hold the device firmly to their face to check completing the detonator circuit. The moment the finger touches the button, 3 grams of PETN in the battery erupts. A sharp pop, metal shards flying and chemicals spraying like liquid acid, burning skin, eyes, and throat. And the scope spreads like a subterranean earthquake. From bustling Dahiya in Beirut, where hundreds of fighters gather, to the arid Bekaa Valley, southern border villages, and even Damascus in Syria, where Hezbollah allies are meeting. A fighter in Tyre loses his entire hand while driving. A mid-level commander in Bekaa goes blind in both eyes, bloodied on the meeting table. Even Iran's ambassador to Lebanon, Mojtaba Amani, is hospitalized with hand and face wounds, when his pager explodes during a diplomatic meeting. According to Lebanon's Ministry of Health, in the first 30 minutes alone, over 1,500 emergency cases, flood hospitals with initial totals of 12 dead and over 2,800 injured, numbers skyrocketing when including children and medical staff who unwittingly use the devices. Chaos erupts instantly. Beirut streets flood with screams and wailing ambulance sirens. People toss pagers into the roads like time bombs, creating hazardous piles that the Lebanese army must clear with robots. Hospitals in Tyre and Beirut descend into nightmare hallways, overflow with patients with disfigured faces, severed hands, and spreading chemical burns. The Lebanese government declares a national emergency, urging discard all suspicious communication devices. For Hezbollah, this is catastrophe. The command network collapses in a blink. Units can't transmit orders. Senior commanders panic and discard backup radios, and morale shatters as they realize the enemy is in our pockets. Wave 2, radio explosion follow-up strike, September 18, 2024, 5:00 p.m. Before they can catch their breath, Mossad unleashes the second blow, exactly 25 hours later, as Hezbollah drowns in rescue chaos. This time, the target is handheld ICOM ICV-82 radios, counterfeit models long out of production, bought over $16,000 through the same supply chain. The activation signal is similar. A radio command turns the battery into a bomb, causing stronger explosions, often with fire and smoke. The scope remains familiar: Beirut, southern Lebanon, and Bekaa, but consequences more ferocious. Over 70 fire and explosion incidents recorded, from burning motorcycles on streets to secret weapon depots detonating. Standout incidents like action movies: an explosion right in the middle of a pager, victim's funeral in Dahieh, turning the ceremony into a hell of fire and smoke. A radio detonating in an ambulance near the American University of Beirut, forcing the Lebanese army to destroy the device on site, while Hezbollah crowds block journalists. Even biometric fingerprint scanners used to authenticate commanders are suspected of tampering, adding to the spreading chaos. Total casualties from Wave 2. Another 25 dead, pushing the overall tally to 37, with thousands more injured per Reuters. Mossad's tactic here is a masterpiece, not just physical damage, but psychological paralysis. By striking synchronously, they prove we control everything, from pagers to radios, from commanders to rescuers. Hezbollah loses response capability. No orders, no coordination, just fear spreading like a virus. A year later, in September 2025, the explosion anniversary becomes a divisive symbol. Hezbollah posts videos of pager victims returning to fight with scarred faces and prosthetic arms to boost morale. But according to the New Arab, the organization remains stunned with its biggest security failure in history. Nasrallah's son reveals his father was insanely furious about the pagers in his final days, per Times of Israel. In Beirut, thousands protest to commemorate victims, holding signs, "Never forget, never forgive," while Israeli drones circle overhead as a warning. Reuters reports victims still undergo monthly surgeries, children permanently blind, and Lebanon enters a horrific year, from pagers to Israeli airstrikes. The campaign didn't just destroy devices, it shattered Hezbollah's illusion of invulnerability. Next, we'll explore the deep consequences, from Nasrallah's death to ethical questions. Do you think this strike changed the war forever? Comment below, like and subscribe for the thrilling Part 6. Infiltrating 6. Consequences and impact. From paralysis to the decapitation campaign. As the final pager and radio explosions fade into the evening of September 18, 2024, Lebanon faces not just physical rubble, burning cars, overwhelmed hospitals, and thousands of disfigured faces, but a deeper wound: Hezbollah's spiritual paralysis. With over 10 years tracking Mossad, I can assert this campaign wasn't just an intelligence strike, it was the catalyst for a chain of events reshaping Middle East power balances. From immediate casualties to Hassan Nasrallah's death, and now a year of chaos extending to October 2025. Let's analyze the aftermath, where Israel's strategic success collides with humanitarian tragedy. First, the numbers. Human tragedy. Overall, the campaign caused at least 37 deaths and over 4,000 injuries, mostly Hezbollah fighters and mid-level commanders, but also civilians, children, and even medical staff who unwittingly used the devices. The wounds aren't ordinary bullets or shrapnel, they're chemical burns from PET permanent blindness, severed hands and faces riddled with scars, marks victims carry for life. Lebanese hospitals plunge into crisis. Over 30 Red Cross ambulances mobilized, but the national healthcare system, already exhausted from economic crises, nearly collapses. For Hezbollah, this isn't just loss of life. It's a strategic, psychological blow. As former Mossad officer Gabriel revealed on 60 Minutes, the goal isn't to kill. If dead, they're dead. But if wounded, they must be taken to hospital, resources drained, and become living proof, don't mess with us. Each victim is a daily reminder, spreading fear through the network. Is the next device safe? Are comrades still trustworthy? The psychological impact reaches the leadership pinnacle. Hassan Nasrallah, Hezbollah's immortal icon who once vowed to wipe out Israel, is swept into the vortex. According to his son Jawad, Nasrallah revealed in a September 2025 interview, his father spent his final days in insane fury over the pager incident. He was in the bunker witnessing a nearby explosion and screamed, "How could they infiltrate so deeply?" Jawad recounted, describing Nasrallah as a man betrayed by the very system he built. Nasrallah's public speech just 2 days after the explosion, usually fiery and full of fire, now feeble voice, trembling, eyes showing defeat. That was the spiritual surrender moment. Hezbollah, proud of its invulnerability, suddenly realizes Mossad is everywhere, from supply chains to fighters' pockets. And that paralysis opens a window of opportunity for Israel. Just 10 days after the pagers on September 27, 2024, the Israeli Air Force IAF delivers the decisive blow. A series of precision airstrikes on the underground command center in Dahieh, Beirut, eliminating Nasrallah along with top generals. The pager campaign weakened the defense system, not just communications, but morale, leaving Hezbollah unable to respond in time. According to the Brookings Institution, Nasrallah's death is a turning point, severing the head of the snake and paralyzing the command chain. 2 months later, on November 27, 2024, a fragile ceasefire is signed under international pressure, ending 14 months of bloody conflict. Israel declares victory. Thousands of tunnels destroyed, missile stockpiles depleted, and over 60,000 Galilee residents begin returning home. But that success comes at a high cost. Contrasting evaluations erupt immediately. Strategically, it's Israel's masterpiece, Hezbollah, the biggest northern enemy, severely weakened, losing its iconic leader and rocket attack capability, per analysis from Georgetown Journal of International Affairs in March 2025. Prime Minister Netanyahu even gifts U.S. President Donald Trump a gold pager engraved "Press with both hands" at the White House on February 6, 2025. A symbolic gesture, with Trump calling it a great operation. But the humanitarian cost is enormous. Thousands of Lebanese civilians indirectly affected through medical and economic chaos, with Human Rights Watch accusing the pager incident of being disguised terrorism, violating international war laws. The ethical question echoes, does the end justify the means when it blurs the line between intelligence and slaughter? By October 2025, a year later, the legacy is still chaos. Hezbollah refuses disarmament despite pressure from the Lebanese government, backed by the U.S., per Al Jazeera. The organization is reeling, losing thousands of fighters and arsenals, but Iran still pumps money for slow rebuilding. Lebanon enters a horrific year, from pagers to Israeli airstrikes and southern border occupations plunging the country into deeper recession, with pager victims still needing monthly surgeries. According to Times of Israel, Hassan Nasrallah admits, "My father died with rage over the pager. It changed everything." Hezbollah remains a threat, but weaker than ever, forced to diversify communications and avoid direct confrontation. The pager campaign didn't just destroy, it reshaped. Next, we'll conclude with the long-term legacy and open questions. Do you think Israel would repeat this strike? Comment below, like and subscribe for part 7. 7. Conclusion and open questions. The legacy of the exploding pager. As the last pager shards are cleared from Beirut streets by late September 2024, the world witnesses not just a pinnacle Mossad intelligence campaign, but a new chapter in the blood and fire history of the Middle East. With over 10 years tracking Mossad's operations, I can assert how Israel destroyed Hezbollah with exploding pagers isn't just a story of small explosions. It's proof of the power of patience, infiltration, and ruthless creativity. A 1990s pager, seemingly harmless, became the symbol of collapse, severing Hezbollah's command network, paving the way for Hassan Nasrallah's death, and shifting the power balance on the Israel-Lebanon border. But a year later, in October 2025, its legacy remains a double-edged sword, strategic victory for Israel, but lingering pain for Lebanon and haunting ethical questions worldwide. Let's wrap up this journey and pose open questions for the future. Israel's greatest achievement lies in decapitation capability, cutting off the snake's head without full-scale war. The pager campaign, with its 2 synchronized explosion waves, paralyzed Hezbollah's command and control C2 system in hours, turning their security obsession into a fatal weakness. Over 5,000 devices affected, leading to 37 deaths and more than 4,000 injuries, mostly core fighters and mid-level commanders. This not only caused immediate chaos, it opened a window of opportunity for the Israeli Air Force, IAF, to strike the Dahieh Center on September 27, 2024, eliminating Nasrallah, along with top generals. According to Brookings experts, his death is a geopolitical turning point, severely weakening Iran's extended arm in Lebanon and reducing northern rocket threats to Israel. Over 60,000 Galilee residents evacuated urgently after October 7, 2023, can now begin returning, with borders safer than ever. Hezbollah's arsenal is massively destroyed. Tunnels collapsed and organizational morale shattered. A victory Prime Minister Netanyahu proudly showcased to U.S. President Donald Trump via the symbolic gift, a gold pager engraved, "Press with both hands" at the White House on February 6, 2025. Trump called it a great operation, affirming Mossad's status as the world's intelligence master. But that legacy isn't an end. It's the start of a challenging rebuild. Hezbollah, though heavily defeated after a year of war, isn't eradicated. Iran continues pumping money and weapons, helping the organization regroup slowly but resiliently. By October 2025, a year after Nasrallah's death, Hezbollah rejects all disarmament plans from the Lebanese government, US-backed, and remains a legitimate party in the eyes of a Shiite segment. According to Al Jazeera and AP News, they've lost thousands of fighters, significantly depleted missile stockpiles, and face internal rifts, but remain dangerous. Sporadic border attacks continue, and the organization is diversifying communications to avoid repeating the pager tragedy. The Washington Institute assesses Hezbollah is defeated, but still dangerous. A latent threat, unless the international community intervenes more forcefully. In Lebanon, the horrific year, from pagers to Israeli airstrikes, has plunged the country into deep recession, economy, paralyzed victims still needing monthly surgeries for chemical burns and permanent blindness, and Beirut, a scarred city, where Nasrallah's 2025 memorial still ignites anti-Israel rage. And here's the deepest reflection: the ethics of the exploding pager. This campaign is an intelligence masterpiece, proof of supply chain warfare, where Mossad turns business into weapons. But it also blurs the line between protection and brutality. Human Rights Watch and international organizations accuse the explosions affected civilian children and medical staff, turning personal devices into disguised terrorism. Does the end justify the means? A strike preventing a larger war, saving thousands of Israeli lives, but at the cost of prolonged pain for 4,000 Lebanese victims? That question haunts not just Hezbollah, learning lessons on supply diversification and avoiding the simple "rapu safe" illusion. But global intelligence agencies, CIA and MI6, now study the pager as a case study, warning of IoT device weaponization risk. For Israel, it's a reminder short-term victories can nurture new enemies as Hezbollah rebuilds under new leadership and Iran fills the void. A year later, the pager legacy is a wake-up call. In a connected world, there's no absolute safety, only those who exploit weaknesses better. Hezbollah will learn from failure, building new security layers via couriers or encrypted tech. But can they escape the enmity cycle? And Israel, with invincible Mossad, will they repeat a similar strike against Iran? These open questions shape the Middle East's future, a region where old tech can change history. Thanks for following this thrilling journey. If you think the end justifies the means, or the pager incident is Mossad's peak, comment below. Like the video if you want more intelligence secrets, and subscribe to the channel to not miss the bonus on global lessons. See you next time.